It's the Genesee County Compassion Club show. This is your host, Jeremy, back in the studio here at All Points TV. It is January 16th, and how is everybody doing today? How are you, John? Got John in the studios here helping me out.
Bleak day, but it's great to see it's the counting down out of winter. It's great. Even though I hate winter. I hate it. I hate winter.
Yeah.
This has not been a bad winter, though.
No, you can't complain so far, unless you're a snowmobiler.
But I'm so good at it. So
yeah, or a skier. It's been pretty lousy for that, John. All right.
I don't care. You guys are nuts when to go out there spinning that white stuff anyway. I never hope to see it again, man.
Yeah, well, hopefully most of you guys are safe. I know we had a big ice ordeal last night, a little bit of a nice storm, and hope you guys are safe. Hopefully it's another beautiful day at the G3C. I want to get you guys up to speed with what's happening at the Genesee County Compassion Club and get you guys up to speed with what's happening with medical marijuana here in the state of Michigan. So let's get it on, all right? First off, I know we just had our soup kitchen down at the club. That's always the second Tuesday of every month. And if you guys can help us out with that, we definitely appreciate it, upcoming in February. But at any rate, yes, we have the soup kitchen helping out with the North End charities, obviously continuing that at the club, and we love it. Definitely appreciate all of our volunteers who show up to help out and help serve, and it's greatly appreciated. So we have the soup kitchen coming up again. Please make sure you sign up if you can if you're at the club. Look forward to seeing you there. All right. Other events that we got going up here. This is kind of exciting. That is this Saturday night at the club. We're having a late night at the G. We're going to have a special musical artist, the Garage Sale Band. They play all kinds of cover music, 80s, 90s stuff. Great musicians. And we're very excited to have them. It's going to be a fun night at the club. We got special food menu items going to be available. And it's just going to be a night of fun. This is an after-hours event, so we will not have typical club activities going on. It is open to the public, and it is free. So how cool is that? You can come down to the club. Yes, you can use your medication or your recreational products. You just have to be 21 years of age or older, of course. Unless you're 18, you have to have a medical card. But it's going to be a blast. 8 to 11 this Saturday night at the G. It's going to be the place to be. So definitely look forward to seeing you guys there. Please bring out your friends and family. Like I mentioned, it's open to the public, and it's going to be a blast, an absolute blast. You know, how many of you guys have been sitting around waiting for years to be able to go out to an event at night, listen to some music, get some food, and smoke some weed? You know what I mean? Like most of you have been waiting your whole life to do that. This Saturday, make it happen, all right? Manifest this in your life by showing up on Saturday, okay? It's going to be exciting, no doubt. Other special events that we got coming up in the club, I definitely want to make mention of February 2nd. This is coming up real soon. We have the Darren McCarty Slapstick Comedy Tour coming to the G, all right? So this is another event, late night event, again, February 2nd. It is open to the public, so you can tell your friends and family to come on out. We are selling tickets at the club for this event. I believe tickets are $30 in advance. And like I said, this is Darren McCarty's Slapstick Comedy Tour. Darren McCarty himself will be there, of course, headlining, and also bringing other comedic artists as well. So this is going to be a lot of fun. Once in a lifetime, really, once in a lifetime opportunity to be up close and personal with one of your personal hockey heroes, Darren McCarty. Laugh your ass off kind of an event. And of course, obviously, this is at the G, so you know what's going down. It is open to the public, and we're going to be relaxing, medicating, and having a good time. So come on out to that. Like I said, tickets are on sale, available at the club. We still have some tickets left. It is a limited number event, so once all the tickets are sold, that's it. We're done. That's all who's going to be there. But this is pretty cool. Darren obviously was playing a little while ago, I believe, at the IMA, which is awesome. But this is going to be a lot more intimate, a lot more up close and personal with Darren. And, of course, obviously, it's at the G, so it doesn't get any better than that. All right? February 2nd. You can go to our Facebook page at Genesee County Compassion Club for more details on the event. And as I stated, for the Darren McCarty event, sorry about that, there are tickets being sold. This event this Saturday with the Garage Sale Band, that is free. So how cool and exciting is that? Lots of fun stuff coming up at the G. It is the place to be, no doubt about it. All right, I have some news I wanted to share with you guys. I'm sure most of you probably have been on the airwaves already, or reading your blogs and your Facebook posts, whatever. But obviously, we've got some stuff going on here in the Michigan medical marijuana industry that needs to be addressed. I want to talk about that today, and just kind of put it on the table, get your guys to think about it, and digest. Maybe we can do something. But at any rate, the crux of the situation is right now, the MMFLA board, as of today, actually issued a decree, if you will, allowing dispensaries across the state that were previously shut down to temporarily reopen with a deadline up until March 31st. Now, the caveat to this is that they are allowing caregivers here in Michigan, licensed caregivers, to be the suppliers for these dispensaries through this time period. So if you're not up to speed on the situation, let me give you a little recap quickly on what's been happening here in medical marijuana industry in Michigan. So last year we had the Medical Marijuana Licensing Board start to license facilities across the state. It is slow moving. The process is grinding. The board seems to be almost antagonistic to the process. But at any rate, they have licensed some facilities across the state. I think the total we went over on the last podcast, something like around over 100 different places. But specifically what we're dealing with is a shortage on product in the dispensaries. So as of December 31st, according to a judge ruling, that was the time period set by a judge. Mind you, LARA had set a time period that was much earlier than that. But at any rate, the judge said, look, patients need to have access to the medication. The newly approved places by the Medical Licensing Board are not online yet. They do not have the ability to supply patients with their medication, i.e., the dispensaries that are licensed don't have anywhere to get their medication from. Okay, so that's the way they set up the program. That's the way it has to operate. And as of December 31st, those places did in fact have to shut down. If they had not yet received a license from LARA, then they were supposed to shut down or jeopardize their ability to get a license in the near future. Supposedly, this affected nearly 80 businesses across the state, which is quite a bit, obviously, interrupting patient access to medication across the state, obviously, and creating a conundrum. So different groups got active and wrote a letter to the governor, also to the attorney general, and stated, hey, look, we have a problem. The people in the medical marijuana community are not being serviced by the industry because of the regulations that you have set forth. It's not because the product isn't available. It's not because it isn't there. It's because you aren't letting us do it. And that's a problem. So thankfully, our governor, our new governor, Gretchen Whitmer, is quick to respond. And so was LARA, which is kind of a new direction. And we'll talk about that a little bit further. At any rate, they responded, and this is their response. LARA handed out basically a directive to the board and said, look, this is what we want to see. We would like you to make a resolution to pass this. And to pass it, they did. They did that today. So today, the board agreed to allow licensed provisioning centers to continue to buy marijuana from caregivers or a temporarily operating facility and sell it until March 31st. All right. The chairman, board Rick Johnson, said that he hopes by March 31st, the industry will be able to support itself without further intervention from regulators and the licensing board. What I think he really means to say is that he would like the industry to be self-supporting by March 31st and no longer have to deal with caregivers. That's what he's really getting at. If they're not ready yet, then yes, they'll have to step in and extend that deadline again. So currently what we're seeing right now from a patient perspective is really a lack of availability. Now, patients in Michigan have always had the option to go out and get a caregiver, and they still do. But the limited availability of caregivers has always been a concern. Also, the convenience factor of a caregiver. Many of these caregivers have been operating, taking care of their 5 patients, and then in addition to that, taking care of these dispensaries that were taking care of other patients. Okay, that's been allowed, even though there was a Supreme Court decision years ago that said basically you can't do that. And LARA even seconded this opinion by the Supreme Court that said, look, caregivers are only allowed to deal with their 5 patients that they are directly connected to through the registration process at LARA. So in other words, as a patient, you can have a caregiver. As a caregiver, you can have 5 patients. You can only work with those 5 people, period. Now the state has obviously realized that doesn't work, and they are saying, look, we're going to allow these caregivers to continue working with these dispensaries, continue supplying them the medication so that patients can get access. And while that is all well and good, the real problem here is that the state is not addressing the issue of the caregiver itself. So Here, the state is clearly relying on the caregiver network to continue to provide the needed medication to patients across Michigan. However, yet they're just as willing to cut them right off at the end of March, which is what they did in December. So for those of you that have been around through this and understand this, you know that they're not fooling around. They did cut it off in December. So for the past 2 weeks, patients in Michigan have had nowhere to go, really, other than their own direct caregiver. Dispensaries in Michigan that didn't have a supply from a new licensed grow facility, they had to shut down because they couldn't carry the product from the caregivers any longer. They were required to remove that from their inventory. Now that this new directive has been rolled out by LARA as of today, these places, these dispensaries, will be adding back into their inventory. So in other words, caregivers are going to be rushing back out. Oh, good, the dispensary's back open. They'll take my medication. Wonderful, wonderful, great, great, great. Problem here is that March 31st, it's going to be all over again. And the taste of what you had over the last 2 weeks is going to be permanent. Okay? So it's something to consider. And I think that's something that the state has to consider as well. I think this is profound that we actually have the state giving a directive to what is probably close to 50,000 different people across the state, i.e. registered caregivers, directly telling them how to go and break the law, to go directly against the Supreme Court ruling that made it so that patients could only deal with their caregiver, caregiver could only deal with their patients. They're just telling you, forget all of that, throw it out the window, go ahead and make sure people have a consistent supply. And hopefully, sooner or later, we'll be able to eliminate the need for you, and thereby will eliminate you as well. And that's essentially what they're doing. This is mind-blowing. I don't think there's, to my knowledge, I have never, ever before seen a state step in and directly tell people how, not just go ahead and break the law, but how to break the law. So in this, I guess, directive, if you will, that from LARA, basically what they're asking caregivers to do is go get a permission slip from your patient that says, hey, I'm okay with you giving your extra meds, which are actually my meds or part of my meds, whatever. I don't mind if you take your overages and take it to a dispensary. The patient's got to sign off on that. So essentially, most of these caregivers that are dealing with these places probably need 5 permission slips. But at any rate, that's the first step. Second step is the dispensary has to keep a registry of these caregivers, how much they're getting, how much they're paying, their information, so on and so forth. And then come March 31st, supposedly it's going to be all cut off, be over with, no more of that anymore. And the dispensary, the licensed provisioning center, will get its medication from a licensed grow facility and no longer will be getting it from any caregiver. All right. This is profound. I mean, how does the state get away with doing this? How are people even, okay with this? And I understand that there was certainly a more pressing need to make sure that patients get medication. So first of all, folks, I don't want you to think that I'm upset that these places are now open again or able to provide patients with medication. That's a good thing. And I won't back down on that. Patients need to have access. That's the most important thing out there. But to try to make a class of people, i.e. the caregivers, go from being legal to being criminal to back to being legal to back to being criminal and just continue to bounce them in your system of legality is nonsense. And we need to have this be addressed. Now, we don't have any court cases right now to point to say, let's see how this boils down to. But I'm sure there's plenty of them in the system that will get worked out. And this is definitely going to create issues down the road. If we have caregivers operating outside of the system 2 years from now and the state goes to try to go after them, are they going to be looking back at this scenario right here that the state just did to itself? Basically saying, look, yeah, we know we have this new system. It's not ready yet, so go ahead and break the law. That's our best answer. Unbelievable, all right? And this is just one of the few things that's unbelievable in the medical marijuana industry today. It's full of them. All right, so I wanted to get that off my chest today because it's hot news, it's brand new. And yes, bottom line is these places are now going to be able to supply their patients again across Michigan. And we have a new deadline, March 31st. We'll see how many new places are up and online and ready to supply. If you look at the approvals that were done by the MMLB, the Michigan Medical Marijuana Licensing Board, and specifically look at the approvals for grow facilities, because the licenses for transport and testing and centers and all this, while those are certainly necessary, none of them are good, or none of them can do anything if they don't have a product to begin with. So really the only licenses you need to look at are the licenses for the growing facilities. And if you look at how many of those were licensed and when they were licensed, March 31st isn't going to be good enough. That's what I'm telling you. It's not going to be good enough. There aren't enough licenses issued as of yet, let alone issued in time, to meet the March 31st deadline, to create an uninterrupted access to medicine for patients across Michigan. That is not enough time. These folks that are making these decisions clearly don't have any idea of what they're doing. They don't know how long it takes to grow a plant or how long it takes to procure medication for a patient. They just don't seem to have an idea, a realistic grasp on that timeline. And so they continue to push these deadlines off, continue to play with people's lives, not just caregivers, but dispensary owners as well, and patients, of course, making them jump through hoops. I mean, how would you feel if you went to Rite Aid and they said, well, we're out of your whatever prescription, but there's one in Kalamazoo you can go to. What?
Actually, I had that happen one time. I needed something because I had stomach problems.
Sure.
Two of the major Rite Aids. I was dealing with Rite Aid back then. They didn't have it. I had to go to another town.
Sure.
I mean, it was like, oh, you're serious?
Shortages can happen.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? And it's not to say that that's not going to be an issue in the future, but the realistic thing of this is that the industry itself, the regulation that's been put on the industry, in no way, shape, or form has given it enough time for this to actually become actuality. It doesn't. The time frame is completely off. All right. So for those of us that spend all of our time in gardens, you know what I'm talking about. All right. But that's where we're at on the situation. I wanted to share that with you guys. And I think the biggest thing is that patients need to understand that the regulators, the bureaucrats that are involved in this, they really don't have your interest in mind. They don't. And it's been proven over and over again. The groups that stood up and did a letter, that made their voices heard, that got this into to what it is today, or am I legalized? Am I normal? The same groups that have been advocating for patients' rights for quite some time. It was not the dispensaries out there. It was not the business owners out there that were saying, hey, look, we need to make sure these patients have access. No, it wasn't. It was the patients and the people that represent patients. So I think that has, for a patient, I think that should mean something. All right? All right. Anyways, I'm going to move on here. A couple other things I want to cover in today's podcast. One big thing is, and this is something that needs to gain steam. It's still fresh, but it is House Resolution 420. And this is a House resolution at the federal level to regulate marijuana like alcohol. All right, regulate and tax marijuana like alcohol. And you guys are probably familiar with that language, since that's the language we just used to get marijuana legalized here in Michigan. This is now on a federal level. It's been produced and presented by a representative out of Oregon. His name's eluding me right at the moment. But at any rate, this is House Resolution 420. It is a bill sponsored to regulate cannabis like alcohol, period. So it would allow banks to deal with cannabis businesses. It would allow interstate traffic regulations to be set up, so on and so forth. It is basically part of an answer to a big problem that we have, and it is partly a solution. And I think it's a good one. So as it is right now, House Resolution 420 at the federal level, it's a good bill, and it needs our support, even at the patient-caregiver level. All right? And is it a rewrite of the drug scheduling? No. Does that need to be done? Yes, it does. But this is a step in that direction, and so that's what what I would hope that implore you to support it. So House Resolution 420. Look it up. You can read it for yourself. I think it's definitely worthy of our support and something that we need to push for. Okay. For those of you that are dealing with business here in Michigan, you understand that just because marijuana has been legalized for recreational purposes Doesn't change anything on the federal level, and marijuana is still illegal on a federal level. And that has a lot of implications. So we need to have some relief on those areas, and this would do that. So House Resolution 420, definitely something you need to check out and support. Please, please, please check that out. All right, so we've got the LARA, the House Resolution. There's one other thing I wanted to cover in today's podcast, and that is in regards to a recall on marijuana products here in Michigan. Believe it or not, there's already been 2 recalls issued on marijuana products in Michigan. These are from the newly licensed grow facilities that were distributed through the newly licensed distribution centers. Okay, so marijuana flower, the most recent recall on marijuana flowers was due to possible salmonella and E. coli contamination, which is, frankly, it's mind-blowing. I mean, how on earth would you get E. coli in your product? That's gross, okay? Salmonella, I think most people associate that with like raw egg, that kind of a thing. E. coli is fecal, all right? They got shit in the weed. How do we do that, okay? So even though we've done all of these steps as a state and as an industry to self-regulate, to be regulated, to test, to pay for applications and to legitimize themselves, they're still having failure, all right? And just because you purchased it at one of these newly licensed facilities does not guarantee that you're getting 100% pure product, obviously. And the other thing I'd like to point out too is that these recalls were issued after the product, 2 weeks, in fact, after the product left the distribution facility. I'm not talking about the place that grew it. I'm talking about the place that you went as a patient to go buy it. That was 2 weeks after that. So you tell me that you took your meds home and sat on it for 2 weeks. Didn't touch it. Yeah, right. I guarantee you almost 90% of whatever that was including was smoked up, used, gone. You were smoking shit, literally. Okay? Not funny, but yes, funny. Okay? Think about that. Okay? So not only, number one, should we not even be having recalls. You would think that this type of thing shouldn't exist, but it does, unfortunately. And number two, the recall isn't even effective. How on earth did it get to the shelf, get sold, and be gone for 2 weeks before a recall was issued? Nuts. All right? So we'll keep you abreast on this, how things continue to develop. Obviously, there's a lot of kinks that need to be worked out in the system. But at any rate, it continues to expose flaws in the regulated system that Michigan is trying to provide. I guess it all goes back to find yourself a caregiver, all right? And make sure they aren't spraying chicken shit or something like that on their plants, okay? Good grief. All right, so that's basically what I got for you guys this week. Definitely exciting stuff going on here in Michigan. And certainly we have a new regime in place. I mean, I'm kind of ranting about the resolution that LARA did today in the MMLB licensing board. However, I do want to point out a couple things. Number one, this is the first time that we've seen anything come from the governor and the AG's office that was even remotely positive towards the medical marijuana industry. This certainly was positive. It was, I hear you, and I'm going to do something about it. So that response to the patient's needs, A+. A+, all right? And a 180-degree turnaround from the previous administration. Absolutely, 180-degree turnaround. So that's huge. All right, maybe we'll see more positives come out of this administration in the future. That's a wonderful thing. All right, I guess the other thing that would be is even so with that being said, and the way that the board is going, the other thing is that this is the first time that we saw the board sort of be directed on what to do. The narrative that was issued by LARA and what the board was going to conduct business on today, it was clearly given. I mean, they gave them deadlines. They told them what they were going to have to issue as far as the process goes to reinstate these centers. And essentially, MMLB, the board, just rubber stamped it. They said, okay, yep, we agree, 4-0 vote, and on it went. And I don't know where the other 3 board members were today. Maybe they weren't present, whatever. But I know that it was voted 4-0 to pass this resolution. But the point I'm making is that this is the first time we've really seen Lara basically say to the board, look, this is what you're going to do. Now go do it. That's a pretty big deal. I mean, up until this point, the board's pretty much been operating autonomously from Lara. And we've seen them make their own decisions, throw back things onto the state that maybe they were supposed to take care of or maybe they weren't supposed to even worry about. And this is definitely a new direction. So good things happening here in Michigan, definitely positive movements forward. Patients having access is the most important key right now, of course. And I think it is being taken into consideration, albeit not the best way possible, but at least it's better than nothing. So, all right, that's what I got for you guys this week. So I think it's good stuff, all right? And I definitely think that there's a bright future ahead. What I would definitely remind you of is, man, support the small businesses, okay? Support your neighbor, support the people around you, because those are people that you can go to, you can talk to them, you can ask them questions, you can hold them accountable, and the more disconnected that we get, the less you have of that available, for sure. So, all right, thank you guys for being with me this week. I hope to definitely see you guys down at the club on Saturday. Again, the event starts at 8 p.m. I think they're actually going to be starting a little bit earlier than that, maybe even like 7 or something, but you know, Garage Sale Band, if you guys haven't heard of these guys before, they're freaking awesome. Awesome musicians. Saturday night is going to be an absolute blast, and it's free. So please, open to the public, come on down, hang out, grab a bite of food, smoke one, sit and jam and relax, have a good time. That's what it's going to be all about. So let's do that, all right? In the meantime, you guys stay warm, stay healthy, and stay medicated, all right? This is the Genesee County Compassion Club Show. I'm your host, Jeremy. Have a great week. See you.